Welcome to another episode of the CotAcasT. My name is Brian Bermudez, and I'm the host of the Craft of the Air podcast, the aviation podcast that expands your knowledge in each episode. Join us as we explore the untold world of aviation together. I'm here with some pretty cool students. I'm here with Mohammed, Lewis, and my friend Stevenson. I got it right this time. So today we're talking to A&P students. I have a really good guest of mine, Michael. Is here with me, an excellent student, and I see a lot of potential in Michael. I'm so glad that you came on.
Well, thanks for having me on.
What made you decide to become an A&P?
Well, quite honestly, it's a number of things. I've always been into aviation since I was a kid. I came home from Russia when I was like 1.5, 2 years old, for starters, and as soon as I see this huge aeroplane, it was a Tupolev at the time. I mean, you look at this thing, it was the biggest piece of rubbish you ever saw fly. But for me, my ultimate goal eventually is to become a member of the National Transportation Safety Board as an air crash investigator. However, I figure, let me get some experience on the field first.
Okay.
Because once I'm an investigator, all that stuff that I know is supposed to be done properly is something that I'll add on when someone doesn't do it correctly, if you will.
You have added gain knowledge now because you know how these systems work.
Exactly.
What will you say for people considering something like that, considering that type of path? I mean, maybe A&P, and they say, I want to be an A&P, but I want to do other things, not line maintenance after I graduate.
I'm going to say this to anyone who really thinks that they want to go and get stuck turning wrenches for the rest of their life. You do not want to go and get stuck turning wrenches for the rest of your life.
So what do you look most forward to for working for the NTSB? Because I know you're going to get the job.
Quite frankly, it's always wondering what went wrong. Ever since Malaysian 370 disappeared, I've always wanted to go and solve some very hard cases in this stuff. Because the thing that amazes me about aviation accidents is it's never just one single thing. We can easily all say, oh, it's the mechanic's fault, oh, it's the pilot's fault. But in reality, there's a bunch of steps
so many components
that are going into this, that it's not just simply the pilot error or mechanic error or the plane being a bad aeroplane.
Do you think A&P should be called engineers or mechanics?
Quite frankly, considering the fact that a lot of A&Ps get involved in NTSB structures, I think the proper term should be engineers. Because, let's face the facts, we deal with a lot more technical data than someone who's working on a car does. I look at the salaries and I say...
That's a two-part question for you, Mike, because I'm going to ask you about the NTSB salaries as well, because I don't know anything about that.
Fair enough. I look at the salaries and I say, given the kind of back-breaking work that they go into and the kind of technical work that they go into, why are we getting... It's a substantial salary, but I feel like it could be better. Well, given what the NTSB does versus what you would get in the private sector, and by the private sector I mean like companies own sectors compared to government. The thing that's nice about the National Transportation Safety Board is you're under a government paycheck and then under a government pension.
Federal benefits, yes.
So you have a lot more federal benefits working through them than you would through...
federal pension in 20 years. And then you're still young enough to go do something else. Yeah, I see that. You're a federal employee because you work for the NTSB. All right, last question for Mike. What innovation would you like to see in aviation going into the future? And it could be for safety, it could be for mechanics, anything.
Quite frankly, I think the biggest innovations that we have to put in really is not necessarily a technical innovation more than it is a human innovation. And that is having a healthy balance between working with computers and working with people. I'll use a perfect example. There was an accident related to the A320 with Air France during its maiden flight. And what happened was the pilot needed to set the power to a specific level, but the Airbus wouldn't allow that because it was nearing its stall speed. So the plane literally glided into a tree line. Simultaneously, that accident, another catch with it is the pilot was flying at a very low altitude. So the risk of a controlled flight into a terrain accident was higher. I'm only mentioning that because there was more than one thing. It wasn't just the Airbus. The pilot could have made a better decision, and quite frankly, I think Airbus needs, in that respect, should have made a more pilot-friendly interface.
Was that the one that they were acquitted over?
Yeah, the pilots were acquitted over
Wow.
that because of the computer error.
That was an interesting one. Mike, thank you so much for coming on. You bring up such interesting points, such good points, and I know you're going to do such good things in aviation. I really enjoy having you in my classes. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's more than happy to be on this podcast. By the way, if anyone's listening and this is your first ever podcast with Brian Bermudez, I highly recommend you listen to the rest of what he has.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And Mike's going to come on some more episodes, so we'll be here with a very good student of mine, Stevenson. Did I say it right this time?
Yeah, Stevenson.
He's okay. So he's a new student of mine, and we've known each other for a couple of weeks. We're in the summer session, and the first thing I'm going to say about summer session, it goes quick, right? Like you have to be able to study a lot of material at once.
I actually prefer it this way. You know, we get right to it. 15-week session is okay, but 7 weeks from the first day, we dig right into material and we get it out of the way. So I'm pretty much okay with the shorter sessions. I mean, the classrooms time are a little bit long, but that's all right.
Yeah. And you know that's funny because we could sense another AMP, and he fed into what I was going to tell. We didn't rehearse this. He didn't even look at the script before this. And I was going to say that as AMPs, we like to get things done quickly. The guys that are go-getters are the ones that finish at the end.
Definitely.
The guys that procrastinate, they don't get to that. Wrong college, AMP, what made you decide?
Oh, man. So AMP, honestly, is a stepping stone. You know, I want my pilot's license in the future, but what really got me into aviation is I grew up in Trinidad, by the way, you know, born and raised in Trinidad. The first time I ever came to the United States, I think I was about 7 years old. Like, most people are, like, anxious about airplanes. You know, they're nervous, they're worried.
Yeah.
To me, it's a rush. You know, I have that aviation bug, and I kind of strayed from it a little bit, and I'm kind of getting back into it. You know, once it gets you, it's uncontrollable.
Yeah.
You just got to be out there. It's an amazing feat of technology how, as humans, with the inability for flight, we innovated and gave ourselves that ability to connect the world.
Yeah.
It's really, truly amazing. And that's really what drives me to work in the aviation industry. I want to see how it evolves. You know, do the planes get faster?
Yeah.
Do our time of travel get shorter? Like, I'm ready to see what that goes to.
That makes me happy to see that and hear that because aviation was my passion growing up. So when I hear somebody that shares that passion, you know, it's not somebody out there that's necessarily for the paycheck. The paycheck's good, but at the end of the day, it's that passion. Like you said, you know, pilot is something that is in your goal. That's something in your future. What will you say to people that are considering the AMP and maybe somebody that's considering a pilot's license and an AMP, kind of something similar?
I would say go for it. You know, it's not the rocket science that it appears to be from the outside. It's actually very understandable, and you're not going it alone. You know, you're gonna go to the school. You're gonna get a group of friends. You're gonna have classmates that you're gonna create bonds with, and eventually, those coworkers that you create bonds with. Like the core of aviation that most people don't see behind the scenes is truly teamwork. Everything works together.
Yes.
The support is there. You know, you just keep head first, head up, keep pushing through, and pretty much anybody could do this.
I love what Stevenson mentioned because it's like I feel like there are so many people out there that are kind of like on the fence, like, man, that seems like a really cool job, or I'm thinking about it, but then like, man, I don't even know how I'm gonna learn that stuff, or I know nothing about that. And like you said, there's support here, you know, from beginning to end. Really. What do you look forward to most about getting out there? Do you even plan? What are your plans? You plan on working for an airline, or just go straight into the pilot and maybe go into something from there?
I'm definitely going to start with working for an airline, then probably phase over into the pilot training. I mean, I'm hoping that there's a job that comes up one day where you need both pilot's license and mechanic license.
Yeah.
That's the dream, right?
They are.
But,
Yeah.
you know, honestly, my goals is, other than working with the aircrafts, is really just exploring the world. There's so much different countries out there, and I'm trying to see as much as I can.
Coming from a beautiful country yourself, Trinidad, and you know firsthand that there's so much beauty out there.
Exactly.
That you can get to see, and you can utilize that as a mechanic as part of your benefits. You can work in the field you love and see this beautiful world. at the same time.
Exactly. The biggest topic, honestly, there's a lot of them, but sustainability is going to be one of the biggest ones. You know, there's a lot of companies out there trying to shift from the use of the fuels that we use now to find other alternatives. Um, the ultimate end goal is to make air travel more green, the same way that they're trying to do with land travel to protect the planet. I mean, right now it doesn't seem like it's we're making some headway. Like, we definitely have way more fuel efficient planes and engines, and
Right.
it's constantly evolving. Each day planes are getting lighter with the introduction of fiberglass components, but it's definitely going to be sustainability. Like, how can we reduce our carbon footprint but still get everyone where we need to go?
Yeah, yeah, and that is a big topic, and I did two episodes actually on SAF, sustainable aviation fuels, and sustainability moving forward, and we're starting to see that from some of our hometown airlines like United Airlines. So that gives us some good hope, and I'm so glad that somebody brings that up, because I do ask people that question, and they always go back to something else. So I'm glad that somebody brought that up. Yeah. Should A&Ps be called engineers or mechanics? Why or why not?
To some degree, yes.
Why?
Part of our curriculum is physics. I feel like if we're learning upper level math, we should be considered engineers. And to a certain degree, where some A&Ps are engineers, they go on to become that engineering background, like they have the engineering degree. You know, and to what we do to an extent is engineering, because there's guys out there, especially in the general field, they don't have the support that a commercial aviation mechanic would have. You know, there is no maintenance control they can call, so they got to, lack of a better term, they got to MacGyver it out there. You know, they got to make it work. So to a certain extent, yes, aviation technicians are engineers. I feel like the United States is probably the only country that doesn't consider their licensed technicians engineers. Because you go to Europe, a guy's been doing this for 10 years. He has all the licenses. That's an engineer. That's not a mechanic.
That's an engineer. First thing you say, say you fix planes? Oh, you're an engineer.
Yeah, that's an engineer. So it's a debatable question. To a certain extent, yes. Look, I'm not going to complain about the current salaries. Do I believe that A&P should be making more? Yeah, I would say some words from, I feel like an A&P should be making 60 to probably $85, $90 an hour based on certifications. I feel like there should be some incentive for our technicians to get certified, because it doesn't stop. No. You know, we get our licenses, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have to get rated for all these airplanes we work on. You know, we get rated for systems. If an A&P is taxiing, that's another rating. So I feel like AP should be accommodated for the ratings that they perceive. And in that would drive a lot of your technicians to want to learn more.
That's a good point. That's a very good point about learning more. And that incentivizes mechanics to say, you know what, I want to learn this now so I can get that bump up.
Exactly.
What innovation would you like to see going forward in the future of aviation? I know sustainability is good. Any ideas on how to get that done? Would you like to see more AI in aviation maintenance?
Ease of access is definitely one thing. I feel like our communication is evolving, but it could be better, you know? Like, for one, Airbuses, you get that warning while the plane is still in the air, so we already know what to look for. That communication should be streamlined throughout everything.
That's a good point.
The days of signing paper logbooks, like, I understand the need for paper, I get it, but I feel like logbooks should be digitalized. I should have a system I can just pull up on my iPad in front of the plane and see what was done.
I think, yeah, I agree with that, and especially for innovation going forward, and that saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of money for airlines, costs.
Not to mention weight. You don't gotta lug around the logbook in the cockpit in the flight deck anymore.
Stevenson, thank you so much for having you.
No problem.
This is gonna be a good mechanic. I know that we have some good talent coming on. I know you're gonna do good things in aviation.
Definitely.
Don't forget about us.
Definitely not. Appreciate you having me on the show.
These are unique insights, and I have a really special guest with me, one of my good students, Mohammed. Thank you for coming on to the show. I always really value the things that we discuss after class. He always stays after class to discuss it. He's always traveling. He's always into aviation. He surrounds himself with it. And I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask you, and I think a lot of people really value your opinion.
First thing I would like to add is,
tell me,
COTA has, opened up this. I feel like COTA has a long way to go, because us aviation, I'd say av geeks, we have nothing to listen to. I know we listen to music, but about the latest news, we're either on Facebook, Instagram. We only get to know when something happens. We don't get a regular update. We don't have a forum to find it. Yes, there are bits and pieces of Boeing news and Airbus news and LaGuardia news, but there's nothing that combines everything together, that you're stuck in New York traffic and you're listening to it being updated. So COTA has a great potential, especially the podcast.
What made you decide to come to Boeing and to become an A&P?
So about A&P, I really didn't think about becoming A&P at first. I finished my high school. I'm from Bangladesh, so once I finished my high school, I was like, okay, I'm gonna study something. I don't know what. I started as CSE, Computer Science and Engineering.
Okay.
I went to the first day of class and I was like, no, I don't see myself, sitting at a computer coding all day long. What was the first day of class? What were they talking about? The first day of class was, what are you gonna learn? What your life is gonna become? All the motivation and everything about what you're gonna do once you graduate. I mean, motivation is good, but for me, that was an eye opener. I'm like, no, that is not what I want to do. I was always, even when I was a kid, I grew up in a really big household. Like, as a joint family, we had cousins. We were running around. We were doing all kind of outdoor activities. I know the generation changed and kids are more into
inside now.
Inside, but we had a great backyard. We used to play outside. I was more outgoing, breaking my stuff and finding out the motors, turning it into a fan. I didn't realize I was into aviation or anything like that. So after the first day of class, I was like, no, this is not what I want to do. So I go and tell my dad, Dad, I don't want to study this. And he's like, really? After you went to the whole admission and you go to class for the first day and now you say you don't want to study this? What do you want to do with your life? I'm like, I haven't figured it out. I need some time. And he said, okay, do whatever you want to figure out, but I want you to decide on something that you're going to enjoy. And I feel like as people who come into the A&P field, or like in the aviation field in general, know what you're getting into. Know what you're going to do. Know what you want from your life. So I took like about 6 months off studies or work or anything. We don't work in Asian countries. We always have a business or something that,
I thought the pressure is strenuous over there. Like, everyone's like, you gotta be great at what you do.
Yeah, for high school, you have to always have straight A's.
Oh, okay.
Or it's a family problem if you don't. But so, and also coming from a background that is, my family had been into business.
I was gonna ask you. So your father was an engineer, or he was?
No, he was a business. Like, there's nobody who was an engineer in my family. Everybody's into business, and so that was also a different change for me. So I kept studying. And I looked into it, and the more time passed, I figured out, okay, A&P, becoming an A&P is, well, we call it AME there, Aircraft Maintenance Engineer. So once I figured that out, I was like, okay, there's a bit of studying, there's a lot of hands-on, and you get to work on an airplane.
Airplane, yeah.
An airplane, that's not working on your car, on your bike, or
$200 million thing that's gonna fly at
So the more I looked into it, I was like, yes, this is exciting. And I used to play scenarios in my head that, okay, one day my plane's gonna come with a faulty landing gear. The other day there's gonna be chaos all over the airport because there's an emergency landing and we have to figure it out. So I felt like the challenge is what's going to drive me. Like, I feel bored very easily.
Basically, and you mentioned when you were a kid, you like to be outside doing things.
So I feel like I get bored really easily. So when there's more challenges, something more to it, I think that's what is my type. That's when I realized it.
Another thing I like that Mohammed brought up is that, I think a lot of mechanics are similar in the regard that They don't like standing still. We become mechanics because we don't want to sit in a cubicle. We want a challenge.
Definitely.
And something different. Like I like what Mohammed says. He says, you know, he thinks of these scenarios in his head. What if one night the aircraft has a landing gear problem? Or what if the next night it has this?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes a good mechanic. You know, this type of mentality. Let me ask you this. What would you say for those who are becoming or considering the A&P? You've been through a lot. You started in another country.
Mm-hmm.
You were in another university. You're here now. What would you tell people?
So the first thing I would like to say to people who are thinking about coming into this A&P and the course or the field as a mechanic, whatever. First thing I want you guys to understand is know what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
People just think, oh, I'm going to get free flights, flight benefits for me, my wife, my family. Okay, yeah, you're going to get that. But what comes on the other side? You aren't going to get that just becoming an employee. The whole study process, it is training. It is a lot of cramming of studies to do to sit for the exam. And let's say you even, you know, pass your exam with flying colors. What comes later is your working schedule.
Are you working nights?
Are you working nights? Yes. Are you working days? Are you working in your city? Are you working 2 hours away from you?
You can even be working in a different city.
You could. And not only that, you're okay. Now we got the location aspect done. Okay. Then comes the conditions you're going to work in. Hail, rain, snow, heat wave. It doesn't matter what it is. You are there at the gate receiving that plane, making sure it's okay and sending it back. And I would like to tag another thing that's going to come up is the salary. So we're going to get to it down the line, but
no, let's go on that. What do you think about the salaries, Mohammed? Do you think right now they're fair?
In no way is it fair. That's a big NO with the caps on. So the salary, it's not good enough. Yes, if you compare it to this. Second thing is if you compare it to all the other professions there are. A construction worker, he still makes $30 an hour. And he has nothing to lose. A road has a new crack after he fixed it. What's going to happen? You're just going to hit a pothole.
They have nothing to lose. What do you have to lose with this, Mohammed? A lot.
A lot. You can lose your A&P just like that. And you get fired from one company, everybody knows.
That's it.
And everybody knows. Your career in the A&P field, like the aviation industry, is done.
You know, and for those listening who haven't listened to the previous, some previous episodes explaining it, Mohammed having an A&P, if he's working on the line at one of these major airports, he could be responsible for 5 aircraft for signing that off in one single night. How many people are getting on? That's hundreds of people just in the morning alone on that A&P signature. The responsibility is enormous. And I see Mohammed's saying it. You have a construction worker that makes a decent amount of money fixing a pothole in the middle of the night on the parkway.
Yeah.
And then we have an A&P that's making. Let me ask you this: would it help the title? Aircraft maintenance. In your native country, they call them engineers, AMEs. Right. I think they call them that in Canada as well.
I think everywhere else other than the U.S.
Would that help the salary thing?
Look,
the title change?
It really comes down to what they're trying to point out. Engineer, the word, if you Google it, the meaning of an engineer is a person who designs, builds, or maintains engines, machines, or any sort of that thing.
That's true now.
Maintains, that's us. We're maintaining not just any machine, we're maintaining the biggest machine, the biggest transport there is. And you don't want to call us an engineer?
That's a great point. And you're maintaining something that has basically every engineering system known to mankind in one.
In one.
And you have to know every system.
I feel like it's complete arrogance at this point. Yes, if we look at it in a way, what's the title going to change? Like, okay, you call me a mechanic, you call me an engineer.
Yeah.
Does that reduce my skill? It doesn't. But if you put it in perspective to what the rest of the world is doing, they're hyping up. Just changing the name is hyping everybody up.
Yeah.
And what? You're a mechanic. Okay, I go outside, I tell someone I'm a mechanic. Oh, you fix cars?
It's true, right?
You gotta
when
add,
you tell somebody,
you gotta add
right?
aircraft.
You have to say aircraft.
So
I want to show that this is completely off topic, and me and Mohammed didn't rehearse this. We're just talking off topic, and I wanted to bring up something. I spoke about this in episode 18, Mohammed, and I just wanted to bring up this quote and ask you what you think about it. This is totally off topic. I was just going off. I did an episode said it was titled "Call Me Mechanic," and it says critics using the term aircraft engineer in the U.S. These are critics. They're going to argue. They say the term is misleading. And check this out, Mohammed. There was an interview with NBC, and there was an executive director of Aeronautic Repair Station, Sarah McLeod, and she stated, quote, "The term engineer has a specific meaning in the U.S., and those who maintain and repair aircraft do not meet the qualifications to be called engineers," end quote. What would you say to that?
My reply to that is bring all your engineers, make them do our job. Let's see.
It's a good point, because if you're saying that we're not called engineers, then who do you have in your department to do the job?
Exactly. For me, I want to personally, this is my challenge. I personally want to achieve whatever there is to the limits as an A&P. I want to reach that limit, maybe even be a production manager for a company.
Mm-hmm.
And then call out those engineers and like, look, I'm a mechanic. I never got my engineering degree.
Look at me
now.
I'm here. Here we are.
That's my goal. I want to reach the maximum potential that I can reach to, and whatever gets me there, be it Boeing, be it Delta, be it American, I'm okay with that. And the future of aviation, if you ask me that, I would say, coming from a A&P background, I feel like getting even more enhanced training labs. Training labs, every school, like I've been around a couple of schools, they always tend to have a little backdated system. I understand those parts are easier to, source, easier to damage, cheaper to replace. But I feel like the education quality is not going to go up unless we have state-of-the-art things to work with, to learn with. And it's like the future is in your hands, and your hands are on the past. How are you supposed to advance with like, dinosaur technology? Right? But another thing I do want to add is, I know the whole sustainability is a thing right now, and they want to get more fuel efficient planes, bring the airfare down. I feel like whatever you're doing, you're still burning fossil fuel.
True.
I would say if we're gonna burn fossil fuel, we should, and I say this with my feelings attached to it, bring supersonic flight back. Yes, there will be a premium. $15,000 a flight from New York to London. Sure, it was 8,000 before.
But in
two
2 hours, people will pay.
People will pay.
People pay $40,000 to get on a private jet to go to.
Exactly. People are moving to the whole private jet sector.
I like that. Yeah, that's true.
Just to save this time and hassle, bring supersonic flight back.
You see private flight becoming more affordable and more open to people? Yeah.
Private flight, they should, first thing in the future, I feel like aviation is going to be the only mode of transportation.
I agree.
They should, I know they're competing to bring the fare as low as they can. Spirit taking off seats, then probably make a stand.
Yeah.
But, hold the pole like a bus. But think about it. And Would you take my backpack? Yeah, sure, let's go.
I'll take a plastic bag for $20. We'll go. Yeah, we go for the weekend.
So just putting this out there that people are willing to do that.
Yeah.
And airlines, they are going to do that. So I feel like the future is airfare is so cheap that, let's say you live near Newark, right? And you're here at Vaughan, which is near LaGuardia. You should be at a certain, situation where you're like, no, I'm not going to drive from Jersey to Queens. I'm just going to take the air taxi.
I like that. Mohammed, thank you.
It was a pleasure.
We'll have you on again. And all right. So I'm here with another one of my students, Lewis. Lewis, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciated you coming in on your day off to come here. You made an effort to come here. but I always really value the questions that Lewis has in my class. He always has some of the best questions in my labs, and I've had him for a couple of classes now.
Yeah, I had you for basic electricity.
Hey, that was a tough class.
Yeah, that was my first semester.
In the beginning, but you did well at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I did all right for the final. I should have gotten like a 90 sign.
It was a good attempt. I like his effort because you honestly took the test. I always see you actually putting the notes in, and Lewis's notes.
I still got him.
Highlights everywhere. Like he'll put like the keyword in pink highlighter, and then he'll put like the yellow highlighter to say something else.
Yeah, they're in my bag actually right now.
But no, this is the type of A&P studying that you need to get to the end, because at the end there's usually hundreds of students that graduate and only a couple that get their license from the graduating class. I think Lewis is going to be one of them. But let me ask you this, Lewis. What made you decide to become an aircraft mechanic at A&P? Like, what made you say, yo, I'm going to go to Vaughn, come into the program?
So the thing with me is I actually got lucky. So, like, my cousin got involved.
Okay.
Like, he he's like maybe 2 semesters ahead of me. And he's the one, like,
your cousin is here.
And yeah,
What do you think about those opportunities? Thinking about your career prospects. You kind of like midway through the program. You kind of thinking about what you want to do for the future. What do you think about that lifestyle? That there could be a war going on, and they tell you, hey, Lewis, you want to go fix a plane over there, or?
I like that, but I think it is like I think the people who should be called on the most are like the kid, not the kids, but like
the
young adults.
Yeah.
Like, cause I feel like person who has a lot of seniority has like how would I say like they have a family. They want to go.
That's true.
I feel like that's one of the main reasons he didn't go, cause he wanted to be with his family and like not be away for so long.
And I was gonna ask Lewis, what would he say to those who are considering becoming? It may be some students out there who are still in high school and they kind of don't want to take the first step, or they're kind of like, I don't know if I can make it in aviation maintenance. Basic electricity sounds hard. What would you tell those people?
No, I think one of the hardest problems though is the fact that like me and my cousin talk about it all the time. Like, we would have never found out about this if it wasn't for him.
That's a good point.
Like,
yeah.
I don't think there's too many people that talk about this field and etc. Like, I just feel like there's just not too many
Is there a way that we can? And I ask this question, Lewis, because I always think about this for my business, but we think about it to fill the gap, the shortage gap. What's a way to kind of get that awareness out there? Because like younger people, I'm gonna be honest, my 2 little sisters, they're always on the phone, the Instagram, the TikTok, videotaping themselves. How do you connect aviation maintenance, fixing a $200 million plane, and get the word out there and tell people, hey, look, there's an awesome job out here?
I think you have to do social media. You have to attack social media, and then like obviously bring like mechanics to schools, aviation mechanics to schools, and like high schools, and like that's the only way. Because like I said, I mean, I would have never found out
unless
about
you heard about someone doing that. You think? Let me ask you this: going forward, what do you want? What do you see yourself working? You see yourself working for an airline, maybe a manufacturer? What do you see yourself?
Right now, thinking airline, like American airline.
American. He said American. American.
Yeah, it's because like I said, I'm very family oriented.
Yeah.
So my cousin's gonna go, for American as well, and we know somebody there as well. So like, it's like, and I like the fact that they have a union.
That's a good point.
Most people don't like it, but I like it.
That's a good point.
I like how they look after. Union is supposed to look after their employees. Like that's the thing with Delta. Like
they don't have the
they don't have a union, but like everybody argues, but they they pay you more.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but like
it's kind of a trade-off, I would think. Sometimes the unions protect you. It's always good. I like the idea of working for an airline that has a union. That's a good point that you bring up. What's something you're looking forward to for the airlines? You gotta say flight benefits.
I mean, honestly, all the benefits. I'm looking at 401k,
the dental,
401k, the dental, the vision. I showed it everything.
They have really good benefits. You get like a lawyer on retainer in some cases.
Yeah, tell you and then like you said, we were talking about earlier, seniority. Like like I said, my cousin's father-in-law, it's ridiculous how his seniority works. Like my cousin recently went on vacation with his girlfriend, and she was in the plane before anybody.
Yeah, that's
And
one of the best things, really. I'll never forget this, Lewis. I think I probably told this in the class, but I remember I was at an airport and I was in Dublin, and these old couple, they were just chilling, and it looked like they were retired pilots, and they work for the airlines. A lot of people, we get flight benefits for even after we retire, and they were just sitting in a terminal, Lewis, and they were just looking at an iPad, and they were just picking their next location. She was just saying, "Oh, you want to go here? You want to go here?" And she was leaning on his shoulder. They were like, "Let's go over there." I was like, "Yo, that's the life right there. You want to retire and be like, yo, I can just travel around the world."
Yeah, that's the thing too. Now that you mention it, during the pandemic, that's what I heard they did with like the major airlines.
Yeah.
Like they would go to somebody like, for example, John, was had 30 years plus
Mhm.
experience. They would be like, "Oh, listen, we'll offer you this, your
Yeah,
family all this,
they did.
yeah, and that's it. Just retire, and we'll give you all everything." And some people took it,
A
other
lot of
people
people
didn't.
did,
A
yeah.
lot of people didn't. But another problem too is like, for example, Boeing. I asked them because I was in the meeting. They had a meeting this morning. I showed up, I think, twice for them. There was a meeting at 11 and a meeting at 10 and then 11. Showed up for both. And my question was like, what separates you from every other airline, commercial airline? And they said, like, one of the guys there, they said that during the pandemic and even before the pandemic, like, there was no layoffs. They said, like, that's something they've, like, when they started, especially in the business, like, there was a lot of layoffs. Like, people would just get laid off or whatever, and people were scared of that. But he argues that in Boeing that doesn't happen.
They didn't do that. And for a lot of people, especially the older guys, these guys wanted to just get out. They can't physically do work for the rest of their life, and they were like, you know what? If my family could travel for free for the rest of my life, that's fine. I'll go do something else. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges that the aviation industry is going to face going forward?
Well, right now, I say the biggest one is like they keep saying like everybody we talk to keeps saying like there's a lot of openings, like we need more mechanics and etc. I mean, if that's the case, then you should also increase pay.
Yeah,
Like that
it's a given. It should be a given.
like most people like they look at the money first than anything else, and
That's true. I forgot about this. I didn't even ask the other guys this, so I'm gonna ask Lewis this question. This is great. There's no editing on this. This is straight up CotAcasT. What's something that you would want people who aren't in the field of aviation to know about aviation?
like, dude, we're not called engineers. Like, I feel like that's just like I feel like that's ridiculous.
It. Don't call us engineers. Don't call us mechanics.
Yeah, I feel like that's ridiculous. And if anything, and also you tell somebody like, "Oh, what you do? I'm a mechanic." Oh, so you work on cars? Nah. You
work at Pep Boys fixing brakes.
Exactly.
Put the tape on the wings.
Exactly. Like it's ridiculous, bro.
That goes into the next question I was gonna ask Lewis, because I was gonna say, should we be called engineers or mechanics?
100%.
It has to be engineers. 100%. It's literally every single country in the whole world.
It's not even that. I also feel personally too. For example, like I don't understand how a pilot makes more. And, like let's be honest. I think I just went on my phone because I wanted to check. Like I think they say so minimum or like the average, a pilot makes around $200,000 a year. And
that sounds about right.
And they said
I can't confirm it, but it sounds right.
Like the major airlines, the good pilots, they make around, if I remember correctly, like $500,000 or maybe more.
No, they can't.
700.
No,
I think $700,000.
You listen. You could be a captain for a 380, and you can make $725,000 a year for Emirates or some of those airlines. Yeah. With seniority, but that's a crazy amount of money.
And like I find it funny because like exactly, I feel like we know way more.
All right, guys. Well, that about wraps it up for this week's episode of the CotAcasT. Guys, if you guys have not done so already, please check out the Craft of the Air website at www.craftoftheair.com and get your free initial consultation today. Craft of the Air, our craft is of the air. Comments or suggestions or questions for any of the students that were on today's episode, any job placements, anything like that, let's get in touch. Go to the website and go to the contact section, put in the subject CotAcasT, and we'll get in touch. Thanks again, guys, for listening to today's episode of the CotAcasT. Be sure to follow us and subscribe to the Instagram, Twitter, YouTube channel for the latest CotAcasT episode updates. Rate and review the CotAcasT, and we're streaming now on Spotify and Apple. Thanks again for listening, guys. Be safe, and we'll be seeing you soon.